creeping up on Friday the 13th, a day filled with horror, misfortune, and dread. Be sure to stay inside, unless, of course, you want the thrill of a lifetime. I'm Blair Bathory, and welcome to the Something Scary podcast. Thank you for joining us as we descend into the shadows. So, want to hear something scary? Friday the 13th, Dead by Midnight. Not every monster hides under the bed. Some wait where you least expect them, like in this cautionary encounter recalled by Sam. Have fun, but be in before dark, or else Tall Betsy'll get ya. That was the warning Clay's father, Charles Logan, had always given him, in a whiskey-laden voice that once made even the bravest men in Cleveland flinch. It was Friday the 13th, a date that even locals spoke of in hushed tones. Clay didn't care. He had no use for old wives' tales. Earlier that evening, Clay had been at the Nelsons' backyard, playing a late pickup game of baseball. He had a reputation as the best hitter in his class, and that night he proved it. Each swing of the bat seemed effortless, each ball sailing higher than the last. "Don't you think it's time to wrap it up, Clay?" Terry Nelson called from the mound, squinting as the orange twilight bled away. "You've already hit 5 homers." "Nah, just a couple more," Clay replied, smirking. "7's a holy number." Terry glanced nervously at the other boys. They shook their heads, eyes wide. Finally, he muttered, "You know, Tall Betsy, taking your head off?" Clay laughed louder than usual. "I don't believe in that crap. Throw the ball." Later, in hindsight, some would say that laugh was the last sound Clay ever made. By the time he left the Nelsons' yard, the night had grown heavy and still. The downtown streets were deserted. Broken windows glared down at him like the eyes of forgotten spirits. A flickering neon sign buzzed once, then died, leaving only darkness behind. Dogs that usually barked at passerbys were silent, as though the whole town held its breath. Clay ran, bat bouncing against his shoulder. His mind argued with itself. It's all superstition. Parents just want kids home before dark. Yet with every step, he felt the hair on his neck rise. Then came the first sound, a laugh. It erupted from somewhere ahead and off to the side, like steel being dragged across stone. Clay froze mid-step. The sound stretched, wavered, and then cut off suddenly. For a moment, only the pulse of his own heartbeat filled the street. Then, thump. Heavy, slow, like a second set of footsteps, too large to belong to a child. Leaves crunched underfoot as though someone or something was moving through the ditches. Clay's legs turned to concrete, but adrenaline broke the paralysis. He sprinted. Later, neighbors would swear they heard 2 sets of footsteps, one light and frantic, one dragging. Clay passed the few remaining houses on Oak Avenue. Front doors were slammed, curtains pulled tight. Even from a distance, he could feel the caution in the shadows. It was as if the town itself was aware. Friday the 13th was not a night for disobedience. He glanced at the clock tower on the bank. 10:26 p.m. Impossible. When he neared home, relief was temporary. The porch light glowed faintly. A candle flickered in the kitchen window, the only sign anyone was home. But then he heard the familiar creak of the rocking chair on the front porch. His father, maybe asleep, maybe drunk, maybe something else. Clay crept along the side of the house, key in hand. The rocking slowed, then stopped. The silhouette on the porch seemed too still. Charles Logan's shoulders were there, but his head wasn't. After the incident, when people reconstructed the night, this detail was noted in almost every retelling. The shadow was twisted. Something was occupying the rocker. Something that should not have fit. The back door was unlocked. Clay slipped inside, heart hammering. Candlelight guided him through the narrow hallway. Each step felt monitored. The floorboards groaned underfoot, echoing too loudly in the empty house. Then came the thumps from the living room. 1, 2, 3. Clay turned slowly, seeing first the enormous shape hunched at the ceiling. White hair fell like pale curtains to the floor. Arms twisted unnaturally, fingers clawing at the air. Her face was obscured by a shadow that seemed almost alive. The candlelight flickered. Thump, thump. She stepped closer, each movement deliberate. Clay tried to speak. His mouth trembled, but no sound came. His body refused command. The air carried the smell of mildew and something cloying, earthly and rotten. Her fingers brushed against him. Nails dug into scalp and cheeks. Hair fell over his shoulders. As she cradled him, she studied him. Through the strands, Clay caught a glimpse of something he never should have, a photograph on the wall. His father, younger, standing beside a woman, his mother, her face blurred, half in shadow. Clay's stomach lurched. For a second, the pieces aligned. His mother had vanished. His father had warned him. Friday the 13th was not just a date. Tall Betsy was more than a story. Let's talk some more bizarre details from that night that were later recorded by neighbors. Clay's shoes were found on the porch steps untied, as if discarded mid-run. The candle in the kitchen had burned to a stub, but the wax pulled unnaturally. And finally, the rocking chair on the porch was empty by morning, but the shape of its shadow lingered in photos taken the next day. Clay Logan was never seen again. Charles Logan claimed he had run away, like his mother before him. But the locals knew better. On Friday the 13th, rules are passed down quietly, enforced strictly, sometimes fatally. Some say if you walk Cleveland streets on Friday the 13th, you might hear a soft dragging of feet behind you. Step faster. Don't look back, because Tall Betsy is still walking, still collecting the ones who ignore the warnings. The ones whose families have failed to teach obedience. And if you listen closely, those who claim to have seen her sometimes swear a boy's shadow trails her, silent, just behind. We'll never know exactly what happened to Clay Logan that night. Some swear the events were more than coincidence, more than a cautionary tale. If you lived in a town where the streets themselves seemed alive, how far would you dare push the rules? Hey everybody, just a quick update. I have not seen any birds recently. I know you've been asking me a lot about those, but I wanted to let you know what I've been doing since those birds came into my life. I've really been starting getting into my spiritual practice, and I have built an altar for myself. And I've really been working on my intuition and trying to just tune in and understand all the signs. I get synchronicities and serendipity all the time. It's actually really crazy. So I wanted to know from y'all, what should I put on my altar? Any type of crystals or totems? Let me know in the comments and I will look into those. Sometimes the smallest choices after dark can summon the most unimaginable consequences, like in this true event documented in 1993, written by Sarah Lakasowitz. Friday the 13th makes people reckless. Maybe it's superstition, maybe it's just the thrill of tempting fate. But in Sonora, Mexico in 1993, a group of boys found out what happens when you take one dare too far. That night started the same as many others. A handful of teenage boys, restless and looking for trouble. They weren't bad kids exactly, just bored. Friday nights in a small desert town don't offer much in the way of entertainment, but Friday the 13th, that was different. The date carried weight, Everyone in the village knew the old stories. Black cats and bad luck. Breaking a mirror meant years of misfortune, and above all, there were things you simply did not do at night. Whistling was at the top of that list. But for a group of boys itching to prove how fearless they were, superstition was just another game. They started small. One of them, Raul, spotted a stray cat slinking along the fence. "Bet you won't chase it," he dared. Another, Diego, darted after it, laughing as the cat hissed and disappeared into the shadows. That was strike one against fate. Later, they passed a house where a painter's ladder leaned against the wall. Javier, the loudest of the group, stepped right beneath it without hesitation, grinning as his friends groaned. "What's next?" he teased. "You want me to smash a mirror too?" The dares escalated with each block. They weren't just playing games. They were pushing the line, testing whether the rules their parents had drilled into them really meant anything. And then someone brought up the oldest rule. The one everyone knew, even if they didn't talk about it. Never whistle after dark. For a second, the group fell quiet. It was one thing to chase cats and walk under ladders, but whistling at night? Even the boldest of them felt the chill that thought carried. Because every kid in Sonora grew up hearing about El Saban, the Whistler. According to the old tales, he was a restless spirit. Some say he was once a boy who killed his father and was cursed to roam forever. Others say he was a wanderer, punished for mocking the dead. Whatever the origin, everyone agreed on one thing. His whistle was a warning. First, you'd hear it faint, far away. But every time it came again, it was closer, until suddenly, it was right beside you. And by then, it was already too late. That made it the perfect date. They circled back to Javier. He was 17, cocky, desperate not to look weak. Raul smirked. "Do it. Whistle. Let's see if El Saban wants to play." The others laughed nervously, egging him on, and Javier, never one to back down, raised 2 fingers to his lips. The sharp sound cut into the still night air. For a moment, nothing happened. The boys snickered, shoving Javier's shoulder. "See? Just a stupid story." But then, drifting in from the desert, they heard it, a whistle, low, long, drawn out. They froze. "Echo," Diego whispered. "Just an echo." Javier grinned, though his laugh was thinner now. "Huh, echo, huh? Let's check." He whistled again, louder this time. The reply came almost instantly, not faint, not far, but closer. Too close to be an echo. The boys shifted uneasily. Someone muttered it wasn't funny anymore. Another suggested they should go home. But Javier, caught up in the rush, lifted his fingers again. The third whistle left his mouth. And the reply snapped back, so close it seemed to come from the other side of the fence. The desert went silent. Not a dog barked. Not a cricket chirped. The boys swore later that even the wind stopped. No one saw exactly what happened next, only that by morning, Javier wasn't with them. He never came home. At first, police assumed he'd run off. Teenagers did that sometimes, but the boys insisted he just vanished. Now, here's the thing. Police love patterns. They don't like mysteries. And in the 90s, rural Mexican authorities weren't exactly open to the idea of curses. So of course, the story of a ghost in the desert was never going to make the report. It took 3 days for a search party to find them. They stumbled across his body in the desert, miles from town. At first glance, it almost looked like he was kneeling in prayer. His knees were sunk into the sand, his hands buried beneath him, fingernails torn and packed with dirt, and if he clawed desperately at the earth to hold himself in place. But what froze the searchers was his throat. It wasn't cut, it wasn't bruised in any way that suggested a fight. It was collapsed inward, as if some impossible force had squeezed it shut. Not by human hands, not by an animal, just crushed. In the desert around him, untouched. No drag marks, no footprints, no signs of another living thing. even the insects and the scavengers had kept their distance. The sand was smooth, undisturbed, as though time itself had stopped in that spot. His eyes were wide open, bloodshot, fixed on the empty sky above. Witnesses swore it looked like he died staring up at something descending from the sky. Police filed the case away as exposure, a neat explanation, something easy to close the books on. But come on, what kind of wildlife leaves no tracks, no blood, no struggle? The villagers shook their heads. To them, there was only one explanation. Javier had whistled after dark, and the whistler had come for him now. And that night, a few villagers swore they heard it again, the faint whistle, long and low, drifting in from the desert, almost like something out there was celebrating. We like to think of superstitions as harmless, stepping over cracks, avoiding black cats, knocking on wood. But in some places, these aren't just games, they're rules. Rules passed down for a reason. The boys tested fate on Friday the 13th. One dared the ladder, one chased the cat. But Javier broke the rule that should never be broken. And whatever answered him in the desert, answered for keeps. So the next time you're outside at night and you're tempted to whistle to yourself, don't. Because you never know who or what might whistle back. You have to wonder, if Javier's fate was sealed the moment he whistled, what about all the times we shrug off warnings or dare each other just for fun? Would you take that dare, knowing what could be waiting out in the dark for you? It's time for something from our listeners, and this week I wanted to share an email we received. It's a story from JJ. Hi, my name is Jalissa, but you can call me JJ if you want. I've been a huge fan of Something Scary since I was 10 years old. Ever since I started listening, I've been realizing some things about my family, the Rojas. You see, my family is different. Out in public, we're kind, open, and helpful. We're that family people come to with anything, no matter how big or small. Since I was little, I've lived with my grandmother and dad. My grandmother is a Christian, and so are my dad and the rest of the family. They've always told me stories, strange ones, that never made sense to me. One of the creepiest came from my grandma's own life. She said it happened when she was young. Around 2:30 in the morning, she woke up suddenly, filled with this strange rush of warmth and joy, like someone was close by. She got up to use the bathroom, and that's when she saw it. A small figure darting past her. It looked like a little girl running happily, her giggles echoing in the quiet dark. Grandma froze. The child looked exactly like me, but I wasn't even alive yet. For days afterwards, she kept seeing this girl, always the same, darting through the bathroom, disappearing into her room, laughing as though she was playing a game, only she understood. Then came December 26, 1952, the day my dad was born. As my grandma struggled through labor, the little girl appeared again. This time, she didn't just run past. She stayed by my grandma's side, almost as if she were guarding her. Just before vanishing into the thin air, the girl leaned close and whispered, "Bye, Grandma. Bye, Daddy." My grandma swears this happened, and she's told me this story so many times I can almost see the little girl myself. Every time it leaves me with goosebumps. So tell me, was it really me somehow visiting before I was even born, or was it something else entirely? Something that's been with my family all along. Wow, that is a crazy story. Thank you so much for sending that to us, JJ. And if you want to send your own, send us an email at somethingscary@snarled.com. And don't forget to subscribe here on Spotify or over on Snarled at YouTube. Sometimes the scariest shifts aren't the ones you expect, but the ones you were never meant to take. Like in this horrifying encounter submitted by Wendy. I wasn't even supposed to be there that night. The overnight shift was usually covered by a girl named Amy. Tiny, cheerful, way more comfortable around the dogs than around people. But she'd called out sick last minute, food poisoning, she said, and my boss rang up in a panic. "It's either you or me," she told me, "and you know I'm not pulling an all-nighter." So it became me. I didn't mind too much. Nights at the pet boarding facility weren't bad. Busy, yeah, but predictable. Scrub the pens, mop the floors, prep the breakfast bowls. By the time the sun came up and the morning staff arrived, I'd be a ghost, slipping out the back door, and the chaos of check-ins began. Still, I couldn't shake the weird feeling as I drove in, like I was slipping into a space that didn't belong to me. I usually worked weekends, not Fridays. My whole rhythm was off. And then it hit me. The date glowed up at me from the phone when I parked in the lot. Friday the 13th. I actually laughed. I'm not superstitious, not really, but I made the joke to myself. Of course, this is when Amy calls out. Of course, I get stuck in the haunted shift. The building didn't look haunted, though. It looked empty. The pet boarding place is lively during the day, staff running around, dogs barking, owners dropping off leashes. But at night, it's just this box of cinder block, windowless on 3 sides, glowing faintly from a single lobby light. No moon, no stars, just me and that hulking shadow. I almost turned around then. Should've, probably. Instead, I swiped in, locked the doors behind me, and did the usual. Set the alarms, flipped on the lights. The dogs went nuts, of course. 30 of them, all yapping, howling, crying for attention at once. Normally, that noise was comforting in a weird way. That night, it felt jagged, too loud, like it was vibrating under my skin. I told myself it was just the date messing with me. The shift started like any other. Vacuumed the lobby, wiped down the counters, bleached the human bathrooms, which are always grosser than the pens. At least dogs have an excuse to be gross. People don't. By midnight, I was in the playroom. I had my headphones on, listening to one of those scary story podcasts because, well, it was Friday the 13th. If anything, I figured it would make the night more fun. Around 1 a.m., though, something shifted. My skin prickled, the kind of goosebumps you get when someone's watching you. I paused my podcast and pulled out one earbud. The noise was gone. I don't mean quieter. I mean gone. 30 dogs, and not a single bark, whine, or shuffle of paws. Not even the steady panting that fills the kennels at night. Just silence. Thick, total, unnatural silence. Then came the sound. Not footsteps, not a bang, just a swoosh. Like fabric sliding across the floor, soft, but every hair on my body stood straight up. And that's when the dogs moved. All at once, every single one lifted their heads and started across the room. Not toward me, thank God. Across the room, to the far corner, where the shadows didn't quite line up with the light. I followed their gaze, heart hammering so loud I swore it would wake the dead, and I saw it. The air was wavering, like heat rising off pavement, but darker, sharper, like it had edges. Something was folded there, too tall to stand, bent into itself in angles that didn't make sense. It didn't move, but the dogs knew it was there. Their bodies trembled, lips curled back, not making a sound, 30 dogs holding their breath, including me. I don't know how long we stayed like that, maybe a minute, maybe a lifetime. Then something shifted, like a signal had been given. The dogs released. All at once, they turned back to their bowls, their beds, their pacing. The sound came rushing back, water lapping, claws on concrete, whining for attention, like nothing had happened, except one. The shepherd mix in the far pen. Old, arthritic, half blind. He didn't look away when the others did. His gaze slid from the corner straight onto me, and he started, his lips pulled back, dry gums exposed, and a silent snarl. That's when I almost ran. But here's the thing. What would I tell my boss? That I left 30 dogs alone because I got creeped out? I forced myself back to work, scrubbing dishes with shaky hands, never looking into the corner again. Only, there were more details I can't shake. The lights flickered once, just once, when the silence hit. And later, when I was mopping the lobby, I saw paw prints smeared across the tile, too big to be from any of the boarded dogs, clawed, wet like they just stepped out of the puddle. I checked every kennel twice, all locked, all dogs accounted for. At 4 a.m., I took a break in the staff room, tried to convince myself I'd imagined it. My phone buzzed. Text from Amy, the girl who called out sick. It just said, "You're there tonight?" I texted back, "Yeah, why?" No response. At 5:30, I finally gathered my stuff. The building was still, the dogs quiet, dawn creeping in pale and gray through the front windows. I went to shut off the lights in the playroom. And there, in the far corner, the mop bucket I'd left hours before was tipped over. Water pooled in a long, deliberate trail, leading straight to the shepherd's kennel. He was still staring. Not at me anymore, behind me. I didn't look. I left the bucket, left the mop, left everything. When I came back the next weekend for my regular shift, the shepherd was gone. Staff said he'd passed in his sleep. No one seemed surprised. But every time I close my eyes, I see 30 dogs frozen, staring into the same corner. And I wonder what would have happened if just once they had all turned their heads towards me instead. Wendy, I have chills. That was a really creepy story, okay? I'm so glad that you made it out of there alive. I think we're all wondering, did you ever go back? I don't think I could have set foot inside that building ever again. I always knew that animals had a sixth sense. Imagine if they could talk. Has anyone else ever had a terrifying encounter involving your animals and something supernatural? Tell us your story by sending us an email at SomethingScary@snarled.com. I just wanted to remind you all to subscribe here or YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And if you know someone who loves horror as much as you do, share our podcast and help spread the word. We are so grateful for all of our fans from around the world. And please rate, comment, and review, and let us know what you think. I read all of your comments and I try to respond to as many as I can. And we love hearing from you, and you can send us your own spooky encounters or untold true crime stories at SomethingScary@snarled.com. And we're also looking for 2-sentence horror stories if you want to send one our way. This week's podcast stories were edited by Sarah Lukasiewicz, narration by Blair Bathory, produced, edited, and mixed by Fitz Harris, executive produced by Gail Gilman, music by Sapphire Sindalo and Calvin Linderman.